I've wanted to do a video series about expectations about what EU story, what EU narrative you can get out of certain EU memorabilia for a long time. And I plan on doing something like that, including stuff about the Insider magazines, the Gamer magazines, and the Galaxy magazines that you see here today. What I wanted to talk about specifically with the Star Wars Galaxy magazine is what EU story do you get out of it? What short stories or comic books do you get in these magazines, so that I can kind of talk about what you're expecting when you get them. This is like a guide to what narrative EU you can get going into them, because all of the Galaxy magazines are awesome. They have stuff like book previews, which would have been cool at the time. They have interviews, previews of new stuff, all of that kind of stuff, trivias, and lots of articles about different stuff. There's like a fold-out Boba Fett poster, which it says right here in this first issue. But while all of that's fun, that's fluff to me as an EU fan. I'm looking for brand new EU story, brand new EU lore. And so I wanted to talk about what new EU lore there is in the Galaxy magazine. And I'm going to do this for guidebooks as well, because while I like the guidebooks and while I like all the material with interviews for the authors and stuff like that, there can be some really cool stuff there. I really like knowing the new EU stories, and now I'm going to talk about in this video a breakdown of each of the Galaxy magazine issues and what story content you can expect from all of them. Okay, so on page 46 is the only EU story in this issue. It's called Star Wars Droids in here, but it later became known as R2's Day Out. Now, I'm not going to act like this is an exclusive story here. This is where the story originally appeared. It's only 8 pages, so there's not a lot to this, but this story was originally from here, from Galaxy Magazine issue number 1. It's since got collected in the Droids Calabra Adventures trade paperback, the Droids Omnibus, and several Epic collections. So it's not like this is exclusive EU story to only here. This is the first place it appeared, so that's kind of cool, but that's the only stories you're getting in the inaugural Galaxy Magazine issue. An 8-page Droids comic that later got printed elsewhere. In the first issue, I neglected to mention, but I should, there is an RPG article that isn't an interview or stuff about previously seen media. This is a RPG scenario article describing a new character never seen before called Tagore Bren. Now, an interesting fact about me, my name is Brennan, but I received the nickname of Bren by family members. So this character was always sort of interesting to me because it's kind of my name. One Dangerous Bounty Hunter. This describes the character and gives RPG stats for him, and describes the Weston Games role-playing magazine and how you can get into that. So this does have some new EU lore with its description here of the character of Tagore Bren. This is kind of it's encyclopedic. It's not really narrative, but it does describe different points in his life. So there's some new EU lore here as well, not just this Droids comic that's printed elsewhere, but this it's mentioned right here, new role-playing game adventure, the stats for Tagore Bren there. So here's issue 2, and it mentions at the top new Mos Eisley comics, which I will get to those here. First of all, I love this art piece. Dave Dorman's stuff is just so incredible. Just look at that. The first piece of kind of EU story here is on page 22, and this is interesting for a couple reasons. It's called A Wind to Shake the Stars. You can see an art piece here, and it says, in 1980, 4 years after Star Wars began dazzling movie audiences in 1976, which is interesting that it says movie audiences in 76 since the book came out in 76, but the film wasn't out till 77. But I don't know why it says that. The Adventures of Luke Skywalker were presented as a riveting 13-part radio play, settled back for episode 1 and an interview with the scriptwriter Brian Daly. So this adapts the audio dramas that came out as radio dramas back in the day. So you've got Fixer, Deke, Cammy, Luke, that gang, a cool new art piece here, Windy as well. And this text here is adapting the radio drama into text. So while it's technically not new EU, it's putting a radio drama that depicted new scenes separate from episode 1. See, because none of these scenes were in episode 1. These were, I think, in the scripts, if I recall, there were some deleted scenes and stuff. Here's the cover here for the radio dramatization, which I have included in the EU timeline I'm working on, because there are new parts of it completely not depicting just bits from the movies, but completely new scenes. And this puts text print to those scenes, so it's kind of noteworthy for that. While technically not new EU, this is an EU story that you can read in here. Just flipping over one more page sees you at the Battle of Cadence, which is an RPG story. I think the art piece here, first of all, is really good. This takes place in about 6 ABY. It's an original Star Wars role-playing game adventure, including all new characters, droids, and vehicles. Enjoy the story all by itself, or add it to your other role-playing games. By Bill Smith, and it's set after Endor, 6 ABY. It deals with the New Republic here, and there's a little bit of story content to this. It's only 2 pages, I believe. It might go for a 3rd page. Let me double check that. Yeah, it goes for a 3rd page where it's showing you all these stats and all these new droids and starfighters that you can use in these RPG scenarios. So it only goes till page 36 to here, and it starts on page 33 back here. But as you can see, there's a little bit of story here. Like, this is prose. There's dialogue, prose, all of that to this. So that's new story content for sure. And then you have stats and stuff for new stuff in universe. Looks like this was based on a toy line that we never saw. And then on the last page you get more story content there. More prose in this RPG adventure. So there's that RPG adventure there as well. Flipping over, we have more Dark Horse comics here with Star Wars Tales from Mos Eisley. This was where it was first published. It's an 8-page comic depicting tales from the Mos Eisley cantina here, and it's interesting, but at the same time, Dark Horse published all of these stories that were published in Galaxy Magazine in one 28-page issue that you can pick up called Tales from Mos Eisley. And that it's also in several graphic novels and epic collections as well, and some omnibuses. So even though this was first published here, it was very easy to access elsewhere. So even though that comic technically was first appearing here, like, unlike with the RPGs and some of the short stories in here, you can get that content elsewhere. So I'm going to highlight that as some EU you get out of this series if you decide to pick up all the issues, but it's not really like exclusive to this series. And that's what I'm really trying to highlight here. What EU stories do you get in these issues that you can't get anywhere else? What new lore do you get if you take the time to track down and pick up all of these issues? I think Galaxy Magazine's great. I love it. But again, I thought it would be nice to make like a helpful video, which is the intention of this, to showcase what new stories you would get if you were trying to dive into Galaxy Magazine. First of all, with issue 3, I just want to highlight how incredible this art piece is. I just absolutely love it. But you're going to have to flip over to page 24 for an EU short story that is featured in this issue. Lumia, Dark Star of the Empire. That's a fantastic art piece right down the center. And you've got several paragraphs here of an expanded universe short story. Now, this was a super important step for the EU, because prior to this short story, Lumia had only appeared in the Marvel 1970s comic series, which at this point in time were largely considered to be secondary canon. So to have written a whole short story featuring Lumia in this Galaxy magazine was super important in affirming her canon status. Since then, Marvel comics are considered fully canon. They're no longer secondary canon, but for years it was kind of ambiguous in a gray area. So this was huge in establishing that yes, she did exist in universe. Flipping over to the next page. Sorry, I keep zooming in. It's to make sure I'm holding this right. But you get the end of the story up here, and then you get a short biography depicting and summarizing the Marvel comics. So it's a brand new EU short story. You've got some art pieces, you've got a description of her, and some RPG stats if you want to use her in some West End Games role-playing material. But this is a brand new EU short story, only found here in issue number 3. Then you're going to have to flip a ways back, all the way back to page, it doesn't say. This is Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina. It's another story here, like I mentioned with the last Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina story. This is an 8-page story with a tale from the Mos Eisley Cantina that was later collected in a Dark Horse issue separate from this. So even though this was the first appearance of this story in print, it was printed later by Dark Horse separately, so, you know, it's more accessible there. So it's not like this story's not accessible to those that want to read it. This is completely accessible to those who want to use it. This is just where it first appeared. So that's why I mentioned it. If you're buying Galaxy Magazine, you will get that story to this issue. But, again, you can get it elsewhere for much easier. Alright, so now issue 4. Here we go. This is another fantastic art piece. These covers are all so good. In this issue, you only get the 3rd Tales from Mos Eisley story here. It's another short 8-page adventure that's collected again elsewhere in a Dark Horse single issue, so that it's accessible elsewhere very easily. It's not like this is exclusive to this issue. This can be found easily elsewhere, and there's no other fiction of any kind in the 4th issue. But again, that story first appeared in print here. It's just that it was published literally like months or a year later, with all 3 stories collected in one place, and it's much easier to access that than track down all of these Galaxy magazines for it. Again, if you're going to get Galaxy magazines, just get all 14 issues if you can, but I'm just trying to highlight what you get in the way of actual EU stories in these magazines. Issue 5 is, of course, another beautiful, brilliant, vibrant art piece here, but the first story will be found on page 27, and it is a truly fantastic story that I really like by Michael Michaelian called Double Cross on Ord Mantell. It's about 2 eggmates who are on separate sides of a battle on Ord Mantell, and they're like bounty hunters. This art piece is great. This short story is literally that page, and then all this text here, and then also added were some RPG stats on the species and on the character, if you want to incorporate it into your West End Games stories. After the short story, you're going to have to turn all the way to page 40 with Boba Fett Twin Engines of Destruction, which Boba Fett Twin Engines of Destruction is, of course, an incredible comic series. This is part 1. I believe they split it into 4 parts in Galaxy Magazine. This is where Boba Fett Twin Engines of Destruction was first published, but it was first published here in 1996. 1 year later, in 1997, the 32-page full story was released as a single issue by Dark Horse. So again, it first appeared here, but is this really that exclusive to Galaxy Magazine? Not really. Not really. All of there's comics in almost every Galaxy Magazine issue, but Dark Horse reprinted all of them mere months after they were published in Galaxy Magazine. Still, I'm highlighting once more that this is a EU story that you would get for collecting all of Galaxy Magazine. It's kind of cool. Twin Engines of Destruction is a great story. It's kind of cool to have it in its original format split up into different parts. That's kind of cool. Alright, next is issue number 6. And issue number 6 is again a 1996 issue. This issue featured largely on bounty hunters. It's on page 29 that we get our first short story and EU story with EU lore in these issues. The short story is called Hunting the Hunters, featuring bounty hunters, like most of this issue is. And it features a character named B. Brelia, who's a Bothan who's being hunted by a bounty hunter named Naris Sivlokesh. And this art piece here is really great. I really like it. The short story literally goes from there up there. And like these short stories in Galaxy Magazine are all pretty short, but they're really cool because they're never been published elsewhere yet. I think it would be really cool if someone like on Lulu made a volume to where you could get all the Galaxy Magazines like formatted the same and printed together in one volume, because that's really all that there is here so far. You can only get these short stories, in the original Galaxy Magazine runs. But, new EU short story, not able to be gotten elsewhere currently. But again, it would be cool if that was ever a possibility to get these exclusive short stories elsewhere. You also get part 2 of the Boba Fett Twin Engines of Destruction comic run. I think this is the next 8 pages of that comic there. And that's all there is to issue number 6. It's a great cover. Cool that it's focused on bounty hunters, and a bounty hunter short story was quite cool in there. Moving on to issue number 7, which is a focused issue on Shadows of the Empire, which was the, of course, huge multimedia project that was just coming out around this time. It's, of course, another fantastic cover issue here. I just think all the covers here look absolutely incredible. Look at the detail of Zizzer's hair swirling around the stars, and it just looks so good. The first thing I'd like to highlight for new lore here in this is, funnily enough, Design an Alien, page 13. Design an Alien contest winners, which is a contest held by the Galaxy Magazine, where people could submit art pieces and they put them into Star Wars. And Leland, she confirmed that any art pieces featured in the Galaxy Magazine were considered EU canon. And this was announced in issue 3, but we only start to get new lore for this in this issue 7. And so, how is this new EU lore? All these art pieces here are expanded upon down here in these paragraphs. So, on that first page, the UB Stormback Dragon. During the Clone Wars, the traveler nomad Daemon introduced war dragons to the populated worlds. Huge, violent beasts with horns on their head, shoulders, feet, and tail, +2 on their hips. Jedi Knights attempted to tame and train them with limited success. Many were destroyed by the Empire. The survivors either disappeared or were sold to wealthy citizens. And that was the art piece on the first page here. Then you've got similar encyclopedic-like entries with the new lore for these species or characters like this is where is it? I've lost my place. Roran of Durgi survived Order 66 right there, as stated here. And so all of these paragraphs add new lore to all of these art pieces. And I think these art pieces are really creative, really fantastic concepts here in all of these design and alien guides. Several of these species made it into other projects later on. There's, of course, Wikuchi, somewhat infamous. I think they're really well done, all creative, and the lore pages for them are actually surprisingly thought out well by the people who did them, and all fit within universe, and of course are very interesting and unique additions to the lore. Then you have probably the most infamous thing to come from the Galaxy magazine, because it was official EU, as confirmed by Leland Chi, the Jebi. And yes, that is its official image. That's what's used on Wikipedia in its entry. It's drawn in crayon. I just think it's great. And the Jebi is actually referenced in the Essential Atlas, which is cool. But this is new EU lore that's pretty fun, pretty cool. One thing that's disappointing about this issue to me, since it was the Shadows of the Empire issue, is that there wasn't a Shadows of the Empire tie-in short story. I think that would have been a great opportunity, since this is the issue that's focusing on that multimedia project. But instead, we got part 3 of Twin Engines of Destruction comic. Again, collected elsewhere, features the fight between Boba Fett and Jaster Muriel. I think it's the next 8 pages in its original format. This, of course, has become an iconic art piece right there with Jaster with the yellow and green, Boba with the green and, is it red? It's kind of orangish here, but it just looks great, and ends on a cliffhanger for the next part in the next Galaxy Magazine issue. So that's all the story and lore that we got to the Galaxy Magazine issue number 7. So on to issue 8. Issue 8's cover is kind of like, I don't know. I don't know. I honestly didn't know how to feel about it, because it's kind of got that like 90s look to it, and it's got a Dark Empire style to it, which I love the Dark Empire style to it. I really like Dark Empire art, but it's just kind of weird, especially compared to all of the beautiful art pieces from the rest of the series. It just feels kind of out of the tone of all of the cover pieces before this. But now let's get into the stories that you actually get in this issue. So page 14 is where we get our first story here, and it's one of my favorite stories in the Galaxy magazine. It's called Dark Vendetta, and features Inquisitor Antinous Tremaine from the Weston Games source material. This art piece here in particular, just look at that. It's such a cool art piece. I'm getting creative with my camera work now to just highlight the great art piece here. I just really like it. This short story is actually more substantial than some of the other ones in Galaxy magazine. There's more dialogue, it lasts longer, you get some more additional art pieces for it. There's quite a bit more meat to this story. And then you have the RPG stats to use in the Weston Games RPG if one so felt the need. This short story is probably one of my favorites in the Galaxy magazine. It's probably one of the more substantial ones that you got, and I just think Dark Vendetta is really cool. And then beyond Dark Vendetta, issue number 8 also features the final part to Boba Fett Twin Engines of Destruction. Fantastic stuff. I just really love Twin Engines of Destruction. I think it's great. Jodo Cast is cool. And I believe, yeah, there's the end. In blood. I don't actually know if the main issue is if it's formatted quite the same. That might be exclusive to this. But it's Twin Engines of Destruction. So much fun. They split it into 4 parts here. This is where it was originally published. I will reiterate, it was published in a single issue, all collected together in 32 pages, literally several months later. So is this exclusive to Galaxy Magazine? No, but it is new EU lore material here nonetheless. Also in issue 8 on page 62 is some honorable mentions for that Design an Alien contest, with 2 more art pieces here depicting characters that would be considered part of the EU canon according to Leland Chi. And of course there is a whole paragraph of information new to the lore about these creations, which I think is very, very cool. Like this guy here looks awesome, and many of these designs and concepts were mentioned in later encyclopedias. So that was issue number 8. And moving on to issue number 9, which again features Prince Zizor on the cover. This is another great art piece. Look at Luke Skywalker there with the thermal detonator. It looks absolutely fantastic. I love the stylization to this one. Page 26 of issue number 9 is where we get our first EU story here. It's Wonder of Worlds, and the art piece here was done for the Design an Alien contest, I believe, but they asked the guy who designed it if they could turn it into an EU short story instead. Yeah, because the story and art was created by John Dunavant, but it is by Bill Smith. And so, here's the story. It's a pretty short one. I think there's a little bit more. I'm trying to turn the page. Yeah, there's a little bit more here. There's an additional art piece too, which looks absolutely amazing. And yeah, it's not a bad sized story. It's another interesting one, and you even got some RPG stats for those characters that were introduced there. Then you have to turn all the way over to page, well, I can't remember the page, but there it is, Shadow Stalker, which same deal with the Boba Fett Twin Engines of Destruction. It was originally published here in 1996, and then in 1998 it was released in a single issue. I think it was 32 pages, with all 4 parts collected in one single issue by Dark Horse. So even though this is where it first appeared, you know the drill. It later was all published together, so it's not really exclusive to here. But these stories do exist here, and Shadow Stalker is really fun, really underrated in my opinion. I really enjoy the stories to it. Of course, each part ends with a little cliffhanger to each of these magazines. Page 64 is home to 2 Design an Alien honorable mentions, like the last issue. These are incredible art pieces, really great, and this is the first mention ever, and first appearance ever, of Yoda's Jedi Master, Nakata Del Gormo. And you get all that information in these paragraphs here. I think all of this information is really, really cool, deep lore. Number 10 might be my favorite cover. Just look at that. Han Solo versus an otter, 1997. I just absolutely love this cover. It's a Solonian, actually, but you know what I mean. But the cover looks absolutely fantastic. Kind of hilarious, but awesome. In this issue, we have to go all the way to page 38 for the first short story, which is Sandbound on Tatooine, with this incredible art piece that defines it here. And it features Platt O'Keefe, who is the popular character and historian and archaeologist and spacer and just all-around really cool character from West End Games source material. And this story features her. Sandbound on Tatooine is one of the shorter stories, if I recall. Okay, it's a bit longer than I remember it, but it's a whole couple of pages here. And it features another art piece of Platt O'Keefe and some RPG material for if you wanted to use the West End Games. Turning over just 2 pages brings us to part 2 of the Shadow Stalker comics, which continues that story here. Awesome stuff. And you have to go all the way to the back here, in the back of this Galactic Bizarre series of stuff, to find the last two honorable mentions on page 64 of the Design an Alien competition. The final two honorable mentions, two more fantastic art pieces. These guys actually made it into the Galaxies video game. They were so popular. And they also have these paragraphs describing these aliens. So that's new lore. That's really, really deep lore here for these Design an Aliens. Alright, so good. Picking up steam here as we go through issue number 11, which is probably, man, I love so many of these covers. It'll be really hard to rank them. I might do that sometime. Maybe I'll make a video ranking the covers from worst to best, but man, this one is absolutely incredible. Darth Vader's so buff here, and just look at the red reflecting on the armor. He looks so cool. What an awesome cover. The only new EU story to this particular issue is, of course, I think it's the third Shadow Stalker part comic series. This was so weird. That's such a weird panel. And it even gives a title to the fourth part, The Wrath of Darth Vader. So that's all of the EU stories that are available in issue number 11. Issue number 12 is a really cool comic issue cover again. I'm not sure why I keep calling these comic issues. These are magazine issues depicting Leia here. It's another good cover. And page 22 is where you have to go to get your short story for this volume. The short story is called Priority X, and it features the Loridians, who are like these near-human species featured in West End games. So there's quite a good bit of story and dialogue to this one. Fiola of Lord is the main character in this story. You get quite a few paragraphs here for this short story, and some RPG stats if you wanted to use the characters from the short story in any RPG source material. I really like these short stories that are exclusive to here. They're all pretty fun. Are they inconsequential? Sure, but you know, if you really want to read every short story, you have to pick up these Galaxy magazines, because they do have these short stories in them. There's Tenelka and Jin and Solo and in a bit that focuses on the women of Star Wars. But that's not what we're talking about, because there's so many of these fantastic articles here. We're talking about new EU lore. So, to get to that, you have to turn a couple pages over to Shadow Stalker, the final part. And this finishes off this comic storyline. The end. And that's all the EU story you get for issue number 12. Issue number 13, the final Galaxy magazine issue before it became Galaxy Collector. And Galaxy Collector never had any EU stories in them, unfortunately. Imagine if we had gotten some short stories in the Galaxy Collector. That would have been great. But alas, we only got stories in Galaxy magazine, and this was the final issue. It's again a really great cover. It's a white cover, or mostly white, so it gets dirty pretty easily. You can see a little bit of dirt and grime there because it gets imprinted. But you have to turn to page 26 here for your story here. This isn't really a short story, it's an RPG story, but this is narrative here. It's Jedi Protector, which I've talked about on my channel before. I did a review on this that you can go watch if you want in my chronological EU reviews. This features a Jedi called Shalava. This art piece is absolutely fantastic. And then you get some possible endings. It's like a choose your own adventure. So that's the new EU short story that you get in this issue. And then you have to get a few pages onward from there to get to the Jabba tape part 1. And the next 3 parts, I think were maybe in Galaxy Collector. I don't know actually where parts 2, 3, and 4 were, because Galaxy Magazine got canceled. But this story, again, got released as a single issue by Dark Horse, like, several months later. So it's not like this is a hard story to find. It's not like it's an exclusive comic to Galaxy Magazine, but this is where it was originally published. So, there you have it. That was the last issue of highlighting the EU stories here. So let me spread these out across here so that you can take a look at all of these. The Galaxy magazines. Now up on the screen I'm going to put a tally of all of the new EU that was featured inside of these Galaxy magazines. Somehow, and somewhat embarrassingly, I managed to miss 2 short stories that I noticed while editing this. One is Assignment Decoy, which is a short story that ties into Shadows of the Empire. I literally mentioned, why wasn't there one? And then I went back and realized there was one. It was in Galaxy Magazine number 7. That's my bad. There was also The Emperor's Trophy in Galaxy Magazine number 11, which I mentioned that there was no short story in there either. I have no idea how I missed these, but somehow I did. But it's a lucky thing I caught it now. So that's frustrating and embarrassing, but I missed 2 short stories, got them now. So make a note of those. Now, although I was only highlighting new EU lore here, there are dozens of interviews with artists, with the people who, with actors, with scriptwriters, with authors, with all these amazing people involved with Star Wars. So if you like interviews, there is a lot that I didn't highlight here in this video. I only wanted to highlight new EU lore because I only care about, well, I do care about the interviews. I have glanced over them. They're really cool, but I care about new additions to the in-universe lore. So that's why I'm kind of here for the short stories here, not here for the interviews and the articles that feature different stuff that we already know about. But there's so much there, and I'm not saying that's not cool. There's so much more in these that you can get out of these if you pick these up. But I just wanted to highlight what is in the Galaxy magazine for fans who want to read the expanded universe. There's, like I said, there's interviews, there's article pieces, there's a lot of other, there's action figure toy news, there's book excerpts, there's video game highlights, there's lots of good stuff in here that aren't prose narrative. But the reason I made this video is I wanted to talk about the prose narrative, so that's why I wanted to highlight that here. But there's plenty of other good stuff here. I'm not saying it isn't good because I didn't highlight it. I think that stuff is excellent, but like for people who don't know what Galaxy Magazine is and are going into it blind, like not knowing what they're going to get if they purchase it, I made this video because I wanted people to know what they're going to get when they get the Galaxy Magazine, because I got all 13 issues expecting to find lots of short stories like in each one, and I was a little disappointed that the short stories weren't as long as I was hoping, that the comics were able to be obtained elsewhere. I was a little disappointed by that, so I didn't want anyone else to be caught off guard and go in blind and not get what they were expecting in terms of new EU stories. So these are the EU stories to the Galaxy Magazine. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm going to make more videos like this featuring the Gamer Magazine, the Insider Magazine, several other RPG magazines like Polyhedron or Challenge or Inquest or Roleplayer Magazine Independent. I'm going to do this with the guides as well, like the Fantasy Flight Games guides, because I feel like a lot of people don't know what's in those. With some of the West End Games guides, I'm going to do more videos like this, where I just kind of show you what to expect, so that I can maybe steer you one way or the other if you want to purchase it or not. Like, you can see for yourself what new lore there is and what it would contribute if you got it. So I hope this was helpful in some way to people wondering, should I get Galaxy Magazine? What's in there? And while I haven't highlighted all the interviews and stuff like that, there are those as well. I just don't care about them as someone who reads about the EU, but I'm sure lots of people absolutely loved all the toy news and book excerpts and stuff about the films and all of that extra stuff. But this is what I wanted to talk about today. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Second editor's note, I've just finished editing this, and it's taken me weeks since I recorded it to finish editing it, to find the time, and man, it's going to take me a while to upload this too. I tell you what, but between the time I filmed it and the time it's taken me to edit it, my good friend Surfer76 also recorded a video talking about Galaxy Magazine, and it's a really excellent video. I always love his videos because he has some really excellent thoughts, so I would definitely recommend going to check out my friend's video. It'll be linked in the description. Since he was purchasing these when the magazines were coming out, he has some more insights into what it was like to purchase them, and kind of he has more of a nostalgia for it. So his video is really great in talking about just what it means to him, because the Galaxy magazines mean more than they could to me, since I bought them not when they were coming out, right? I bought them decades later. I wasn't alive when the Galaxy magazines were coming out. So he has some really awesome insights there. Definitely recommend checking it out. It's a really, really cool video. He does a great job with it. So definitely go check out that video. It'll be linked in the description below. So go show some love to Surfer76. He's a really great guy.